It's unbelievable how
Yeah, it's
long this has
amazing.
taken.
It feels.
I love it.
I know these grades are no joke, Brandon. You and I really dug into it. We took these grades seriously. Um, and kind of just a quick recap, re-looking at it because this has been kind of a multi-week process for us. I like how we graded in general. I think when I look at just the teams in general, I respect that like Colorado did get a B plus, and I know their football program had a disappointing ending to last year, and that they had some bizarre headlines, and they have some interesting headlines this offseason. I'm not sure how it's going to translate to the field in 2024, but they earned their B plus last year. Like there is interest in that
Yeah.
program. Arizona earned their B. Um, the school that I think these are all fair grades. I think the one that still shocks me, Cincinnati, that's a D. This is a good program that just made a college football playoff a couple of years ago. Now Luke Fickell leaves for Wisconsin. I know that coaching change did not help them whatsoever. But basketball is the more shocker to me because they've had some terrific teams in the past for basketball. They even renovated their arena. It looks really good. They're not playing very well in either of those two defining sports right now. So they've got to pick it up. But no grade shocked me. I really liked what we've done.
Yeah, I think so too. And it feels harsh looking at it, but that's just kind of how this has been structured. Because I think we're going to give a lot more generous grades here to these final Hateful Eight teams. Um, but yeah, I'm really digging the structure of this. I think we're going to get in some good grades. Unfortunately, Baylor's not one of them. I mean, I won't sugarcoat that. Football for sure. I'll get started with that. They're getting a good 23, just an easy F for me. They were awful. They got blown out at home
Mm-hmm.
by Texas State. That was an awful showing last season. In year three of Coach Aranda, 2 years removed from that Big 12 championship that Matt Rule built. Um, Shout out
Mm-hmm.
to whatever school has him as a coach. Outstanding stuff. Um, but I mean, just a stinker. Looks like that there are my lowest football grade, and boy, they deserve it. What a stinker.
Oh, you're not going to have me fight that at all, Brandon. It's a disaster in Waco right now. It is not good. This is a program that's very proud the last 15 years, and they've historically been very bad.
Hmm.
Robert Griffin III winning that Heisman was a huge deal for that program. And then to get Art Briles and run his kind of convention for a few years there, and they found some great success with Coach Briles. They covered up some terrible stuff. He had to go, found a way to survive with Rule. Amazing, got Matt Rule to convince him to come down, and he did incredible work considering the situation he was placed into. But yeah, I'm with you. Like, what a train wreck, and I got 22 on that football, so I got to make sure that's. I think that's my worst score. I hope that's
Yeah.
my. Oh no, TCU, I got 20. Brutal. I was brutal towards
Wow.
TCU. No, give
No
me
kidding.
20. Give me 20 on Baylor as well. If I'm going to give
Yeah.
TCU a 20, I got to give Baylor a 20 as well. I got to be consistent because they were terrible. I mean, they were worse than TCU. I could almost give them a 19. But I'll just go 20. Let's keep it simple for the math. Keep
And
it
then
simple, Brandon.
basketball, I mean, good season, I suppose. It really felt like their region, in particular, had a great opportunity for them to make a run. Not a whole lot of powerhouses. And then they underwhelming. Where you grading this basketball program?
It's in great hands. Drew not going to Kentucky was a big deal for Baylor. I think that was a win. We're talking in season only, but that will affect my outlook for the program itself. Second round exit, pretty disappointing considering their last few years. They still had a good season though. Like I'm not going to discount
Yeah.
that. Let's go 30. Let's go C. Nothing wrong with it. Like they were fine. I mean, not a great year by their standards, considering they did win a national championship 3 years ago, but you know, still fine. Nothing wrong with us.
Yeah, I'll be a little bit, and that's what makes these so tough. Because like, are we comparing this to like Baylor standards, or are we comparing it to like normal regular standards? So I'll give them a 34, a good B. Good season, not great. Plenty of room for improvement. It's hard not to factor in that's got Drew. I mean that whole that whole situation feels like probably the biggest win that they had all year. But you still win a game in March. That's not nothing, but you got to figure it out here soon. But I think they got some buzz here.
No question about it, Brandon. There is buzz in Waco regarding that.
And as far as outlook goes, I'll give them another 34 or no. Ye- yeah, yeah, a 34 because I feel like basketball is at an A as far as outlooks. That's not correct math. These are only out of 20 points. What would a B be for
A B would
20
be 16, 17 range, like
16?
80% 16,
Yeah.
17 like 85. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go 16. Um, Basketball's in a really good spot. Um, Football is not, and so that's what was keeping us from being an A.
Yeah.
I personally just don't have faith in Dave Aranda, and I'm hoping that they figure that out pretty quickly.
Yeah. I like that grade, Brandon. I'll even go up one. I'll go 17. Basketball's great shape. Scott Drew pretty much just said, I'm staying at Baylor the rest of my life, in my opinion. I would actually be surprised if he ever took another job. I thought there was a shot he'd go to Kentucky. Kentucky was willing to pay him, I think, a good chunk of money.
I feel like that
They
would be
didn't
the
want it.
job to get him.
I mean, they were going to pay him big. He didn't want it. And he kind of made a pledge to Baylor for them to keep him, especially with that new arena, despite the awful camera angle on the court. It is still a terrific arena. They've got a terrific coach. It kills me to say it because they've given Iowa State some trouble for many years, but they're in good shape there. Football is a disaster right now. But here's the thing, Brandon, that football program can bounce back quickly.
That's
I don't
true.
know if it's going to be under Coach Ernada. I don't. But they get the right hire. They have the facilities. That is a school that just seems to find to figure it out. So I'm not too worried about the Baylor Bears going forward.
And Iowa State's an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
Football, I'm going to give them a 37. I'll give them an A minus just because of I mean all the preseason stuff. I mean you lose
Yeah.
your starting quarterback, you lose like a handful of like very um, big parts of that 2022 team. And then now you have this seemingly rising star in Rocco Beck. You have a
Mm-hmm.
very young, but yet also somehow very experienced team for Matt Campbell. I mean, I love what they did. I wish they would have beaten Kansas. That would have, I mean, that was kind of the opportunity for them to turn the corner and compete for that second Big 12 title spot. But then it's just what a great year. I wish they would have beaten Iowa, of course. Um, but that Snowmageddon game against Kansas State, that's worth it at least a B plus just by itself. If everything else went to shit, but you give me that Snowmageddon game and the Little Apple, I mean that's outstanding stuff. So I'm really high on the Cyclones 2023 football season.
Yeah, I'll go 35. I'm with you. I was not expecting a winning season. They lose to Iowa, which was painful. That's expected. But to lose that week 3 game to, shoot, I'm going to draw a blank, but Mac, I think it was Ohio on the
Ohio.
road. And you have a guy yelling, fire Campbell. Campbell's in the hot seat. Matt Campbell wants to fight this fan. I thought the season was about to be off the rails, Brandon. And I remember you and I were discussing Iowa State, Oklahoma State. That was a weird game because Oklahoma State was
That
coming
was
off
weird.
of a difficult loss, I think, to South Alabama at home.
They
So
got
it was
blown
a
out by
weird
South
game. And
Alabama.
Iowa State won that game, and they turned their season around to 7 wins. I would have given them an A if they had won their bowl game against Memphis, but they did not show up at all and were pretty
Yeah, that's
lifeless in
tough.
that performance. And I can't overlook that. But that Snowmageddon game, if you're looking for just games you don't forget, and with Sama to run just all over K-State, which was one of the sweetest moments. Yeah, I think they had a great year. Did they beat Texas at home and try and upset? No. They had a disappointing home loss against Kansas. So those things do add up, but there's a reason there's excitement in the program this year. And considering that, look, I was a little, if they had another losing season, the conversation around Matt Campbell would have been a little different going into year 9. I don't think they would have fired him,
Yeah.
but
But he's on the hot
he
seat
would have been,
list.
you and I would have been discussing if he doesn't have a winning season this year, they might have to
Yeah,
make a change, which is something I did not foresee coming. So it was a big year, and you're right with Beck. He's tremendous. They've got so many starters back. I think good stuff ahead of Nate.
I think so too. Now basketball, I outstanding season. I think they were really humming down the stretch. Blew out Houston in the Big 12 tournament. I mean,
Yep.
which was just outstanding stuff. I love that. And they got a bad draw in March. It felt like, and I mean that didn't even really matter because of where they exited. But I mean they're also probably the most popular upset pick to lose to Drake. So they made it out of that round. But overall, how are you viewing the 2023-2024 campaign for the clones on the court?
All right, it's tough to hate it. Brandon finished second in the regular season of the Big 12. They win the Big 12 conference tournament, a Sweet 16 appearance, highly disappointing Sweet 16 game against Illinois. That said, I don't think it would have mattered in Boston. I don't think anybody's beating UConn anyway.
No
So I
shot.
don't know if it's that. Elite Eight would have been fun to go to, but not a big deal. I'm going 37. I really like what TJ did with the boys this year. It was just a fun team to watch. Those guys, you could tell, really liked playing for each other. Some really memorable games. Kansas State at home was an all-time ridiculous game where you have Jerome Tang saying Iowa State cheated after the game. How am I ever going to forget that? And you have Jim Carrey, the Iowa State Jim Carrey fan, just fake those tears. I mean, that was a pretty remarkable moment. The three Houston games were all memorable. A big win in Ames, a snowy early January night. Houston got us back in Houston late February. They played well that night, and then we beat them pretty badly in Kansas City. So for TJ and his crew, I thought it was a great season. We got Texas. We beat Texas. We beat Oklahoma. That felt good to do. Good year for Iowa State.
I was right there with you. I'm like 37, 36. Like, man, that Elite Eight would have made a huge difference for how I view that season. Then you brought up Iowa State Jim Carrey, and so I'll go an even A. Give me a 38 for the clones. And as you were kind of just listing out that season, I mean, as somebody who's trying to get more into college basketball, that's the kind of season that you hope somebody gets to experience if they're trying to get into to college basketball. Is that exact stuff? Not like a dominant season. And I'll also give Iowa State a lot of credit. It felt like the entire season we were like, well, they've been really good so far, but this is the game that'll trip them up, or they're going to, they're on the road. And they did just fine. It didn't feel like there was that real huge letdown run. I mean, like we talked about football, that Kansas game felt like a huge letdown. Um,
Yeah.
Ohio, of course, I feel like Iowa State really had that.
You didn't really feel like it at all. Of course, they lost road games. They lost to
Yeah.
Kansas State, final game of the regular season. That wasn't a fun game, but it happens. And you're going to have those nights where just your team doesn't have it. That's college basketball. But you're right. I never felt like there was a time during the season where it felt like it was going off the rails. You felt like TJ had complete control of the team. They had excellent guard play with Lipsy, Gilbert, Jones. Momcilovic had a tremendous freshman campaign. Big Rob Energy had a great final senior campaign in the post. Give credit where it's due. Like, they did a great job. And I think that when you look at the overall outlook of the program, boy, it's tough not to be excited in Ames. I'm excited about what's going on in Ames. I'm going to go 18. It will be my number for outlook. I really like the money they're putting into the facilities. Basketball just got a new scoreboard, Brandon. It looks really nice. So Hilton Coliseum will be debuting a new scoreboard this winter that they projected top 10 team. I think Iowa State football could be an 8-9 win team. I know there's that goose egg there. They've never had a double figure win season. I don't know if that's going to happen. I won't put that pressure on them. But yeah, I'm Matt Campbell and TJ Otzelberger. TJ Otzelberger, it's going to take a lot for him to leave Ames. I think even for Matt Campbell, I think now it's getting to the juncture where his kids are used to being in a Gilbert Ames school district, that they want to be there. Like, I think that's often people don't think about that as like with coaches' families. When you move all the time, you kind of want to sometime maybe just stay in one place and build roots and build families. And I think Matt Campbell is kind of aware of that, likes that for him, his wife, and I think 4 kids. So Don't underestimate that ever, Brandon. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'll give them an 18 as well. The only thing that makes me nervous is the thought of Matt Campbell leaving. And because
Mm-hmm.
I'm right there with you, I think he's absolutely built for success. Also, quick sidebar, I don't, I you do not get to talk about Iowa State not winning 10 games ever if you haven't won a New Year's Six game more recently than they have. Like
Fair.
that's
You're not gonna have me
I
fight
that
that.
drives
You're
me
right.
that drives me crazy.
You're right.
Because
You're
it's
right.
such a specific like little threshold. It's like they're a good program now,
Yeah.
and that
Historically bad, but we've been competitive now for a decade,
yeah,
so I'm
like
proud of us.
it's different now. And I mean, if and I hear that so much from from Kansas State, which I guess Kansas State has a good claim. They've been good recently. They won a Big 12 championship game. But then the school out in Eastern Iowa, I hear that a ton, and I'm like, yeah, they probably would have won 10 games if they get beat up on Minnesota and Purdue and Maryland and that god awful Big Ten West and the worst Nebraska teams of all time. Like, yeah, I'm sure they'd get to 10 wins if that was their schedule. Golly. That's right, Drew. So I'll throw Nebraska under the bus to defend Iowa State from those fellas out in the eastern
Appreciate
part
it,
of the
Brandon.
state.
That means a lot. Yeah, thanks for standing up for us.
It's just unbelievable the lack of awareness. But that brings Iowa State up to an A. So our first A on the board. I mean, we had a B plus with Colorado. I think Iowa State deserves an A plus. I feel like they had a lot of success last year. Football wise, I feel like most of that success was
Mm-hmm.
on top of adversity with that gambling scandal. And I'm also seeing a lot of revisionist history when we talk about them losing their starting quarterback in Hunter Deckers because Rocco, he was outstanding last year, especially compared to Hunter Deckers and the amount of turnovers that he had in 2022. But like, let's not get it twisted. There's a reason the incumbents usually win their election, and Hunter Deckers absolutely would have been the starting quarterback at Iowa State had he not gotten entrapped in that whole debacle, which is also a very sad story
Yeah,
for all
yeah,
those guys involved. But Rocco was awesome, but he wouldn't have gotten that same opportunity if Hunter Deckers was still around.
for sure. And that's another thing they overcame last year because when that was rocked initially, Brandon, I think you and I are thinking this season's off the rails. And
Yeah.
yeah, when they lost Ohio, I thought we're Matt Campbell.
Oh yeah, there it
Who
is.
knows? Who knows? So pretty impressive. Pretty impressive what we're seeing in names.
So that brings us to Kansas. Football wise, they won their first. They had their first winning season and since the great Mangino era, which we've spent an odd amount of time talking about on this show, but it was a great time.
Mm.
They had that win against Iowa State that we mentioned a couple of times. Still have not beaten Kansas State in I think like 15 years or something just unbelievable.
Crazy.
I'll give them a B minus. I feel like they had it's a bit of a slope with Kansas, but I mean they're definitely it was a step up from 2022, which is I think exactly just what they were looking for.
Yeah, give Kansas football a lot of credit, Brandon. Lance Leipold's been incredible. They found a way to win games in a wide variety of ways. They're still learning. They're still getting better, but it's tough to hate what they're building there. I think what I'd give Iowa State a 35. Well, I got to give Kansas a 35 too. I mean, they earned it. Probably a 36. I'll give them the head-to-head bonus.
That's a good
They
one.
did beat us. So I'll give them a 36 personally because it is historically tough to win there. And we'll go through outlook in a little bit, but just based on last season, they had some bizarre quarterback issues with Daniels and trying to get all that sorted out. But they're consistent. They're tough. And that team, I felt like, really played for each other, and that's not easy to do in college football.
And then on the hardwood, Kansas for the first time, in a very long time, if ever. I mean, not finishing top four in the Big 12 standings. And I mean, to be fair, they were just decimated by injuries. You knew that they didn't have much of a shot come postseason time, but still, like really disappointing when you just look at it. How are you feeling about the Jayhawks on the hardwood?
Disappointing by their standards. Still not a bad season by a lot of team standards. I mean, they did get a top four seed in the NCAA tournament. They did at least not get upset. That was a crazy first round game.
Yeah.
But by their standards, it was a disappointing year. And I I'm trying to be careful with the grade because I don't think Bill Self put together a great roster considering what the Big 12, what by their standards, considering what the Big 12 is. So I'm going to go 29. I'm going to go 29. They were lifeless a lot of games. They didn't look like they wanted to be there. Big 12 tournaments in Kansas City, they have a pro KU crowd, and they got absolutely waxed by Cincinnati. They didn't want to be there. Now they won the tournament game, got lit up pretty good in the second round, but at least they won one. But yeah, disappointing year by their standards. I can't give them, I can't put them in the 30s. I know that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll give them a bump because I think if you take and it's tough to do this because they are a basketball blue blood, but if you take away that story tradition, then you still probably look at this, that's a pretty good season. Um, but you do have to factor in, their expectations. So I'll give them a 30. Give them a 30. I don't feel great about it, but when I'm just looking at schools like how I feel about Baylor, how I feel about UCF, like I feel worse about Kansas this season than I do theirs. And I think this might be, oh, I guess West Virginia had a real bad basketball season.
They
Utah
weren't very
was
good,
in the
Brandon. I
20s.
can
Arizona
confirm
State.
that.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah, 30 feels right for them. I feel good with them.
Yeah. No, and I mean it just wasn't their season. But you look at their outlook. It I like
This is the interesting one.
admittingly this is the interesting one because football wise, it's tough not to like their outlook. They are building a new stadium or they're renovating completely their old stadium. Very interesting kind of home situation this year where they're going to be playing between uh, Sporting KC, the soccer team, their stadium, I think Mercy Park or something like that, and they're going to play at Arrowhead for all their Big 12 games. So, for example, Iowa State's going to be at Arrowhead early November. That'll be crazy. Deion Sanders in Colorado are coming to Arrowhead. That'll be, I think, a very good atmosphere if I have to take a guess. So, like, they're doing some great work with the football program. They're investing in that. Basketball, Bill Self's still there. Last time I checked. The question will be, can he adapt in this new era of kind of the Big 12, where football, you and I kind of are aware right now they are third tier compared to Big 10 and SEC. Basketball, I don't care. They're number one.
Yeah,
There's no
without a doubt.
question right now. It is a difficult basketball conference. Can Kansas remain top dogs? Going to be the question. But Allen Fieldhouse is a cathedral for hoops. I'm going to go same as Iowa State. I'll go 18 for Kansas.
Boy, I have a hard time disagreeing with that. Um, Outlook, yeah, I'll give them an 18 as well. I think Jalen, I mean, this is probably more like a 15, 16 kind of conversation if Jalen Daniels decides to transfer. Like I was so sure that he's going to. And then of course when you're Kansas, you feel like you're 1 year away from winning a national championship in basketball. That's unbelievable. And same thing for Iowa State. Was going to if I was a Kansas fan, the only thing that would give me pause right now is if Lance Leipold does too good of a job, and then all of a sudden
Mm,
Billy Napier down in Gainesville gets canned, or even maybe
great point.
Sam Pittman in Fayetteville, they're on the hot seat. I mean, that's a different ball game, and when you have the opportunity to get somebody who's built a bottom dweller into a winning football program like Lance Leipold has done, that's unbelievable. So that would be the only pause that I have is the fact that I know every single offseason there's going to be a chance I lose my head football coach to a better job.
And that's not a fun situation for most of these schools. You coach well. The SEC, those schools have money. Big Ten, those schools have money. Can the Big 12 keep up with their booster numbers as well? Basketball, they seem to be doing just fine. Like, and
Yep.
I think coaches want to coach in the Big 12. Like, there's kind of an incentive to coach in the Big 12 as much. I'll even make an argument, maybe even more for some coaches for the Big Ten and SEC. But when it comes to football, they're trying to figure out how to be kind of match that money market, and they're still figuring that out. So that's a great point on Kansas.
Yep. And that brings us to Kansas State. Weird football season. They have Will Howard back. They win a lot of games that they're supposed to. They lose to Missouri on a 60-yard field goal that was absolutely bonkers. I kind of felt like it really put a damper on their ceiling. and for what they wanted to accomplish. Stumbled a bit down the stretch. It seems like they found a gem in Avery Johnson that everybody is super stoked about. Um, of course, that Snowmageddon game that we brought up. They're on the other end of that.
Yep.
So I'll give them a B minus. I think that they really should have been more in the Big 12 title game race than they ended up being, and a couple of real bad losses that just kind of shake your head. But I mean, overall, still a fairly good year. So yeah, I'll give them a 33.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good score, 33. I'll go 31. Nothing wrong with their season whatsoever, but there was a damper in that Iowa State game. They just did not play well that night, despite having way more plays and all that. They couldn't tackle to save
That
their
was
life. But they do win. They do win the Sunflower Showdown. You're right on the zoo. That's an underrated loss. That was very early in the season, and we thought the team's trajectories were different at the time. K State was viewed as you and I were very high on Kansas State last year. I think rightfully so. And they lose that game. Mizzou turns out to be an 11-win program that won a Cotton Bowl game against a third-string Ohio State team. But it's a win no matter what. So K-State, they've got the system. They had the plays, but they didn't find as many wins as they were hoping for. And ultimately, I don't think reached that trajectory that they were aiming for. But it was still a good season. I mean, it was fine, just not. I think they had higher hopes. I'd agree with you there.
I think so, and that's the big thing for me is that they are coming off of a Big 12 championship game or Big 12 championship win, and then you get to go to the New Year's Six bowl game. You bring back your starting quarterback. You bring back a lot of members on this from that team. It's not like they got decimated like TCU did the year before, but to not really be a huge player down the stretch is tough. But a team, oh, I guess we're not done here. For basketball, how are you feeling about the Cats? Finished 10th in the league. Kind of felt like a disappointing year for Jerome Tang. Kind of felt like this was
no other way to put
yeah.
it. I think they got off to such a great start, and I'd mentioned the Jerome Tang, accusing Iowa State of cheating. There was some of that loss that took some steam out of that team because they really faltered down the stretch. They lost some pretty significant games. I think they beat Kansas at home in OT. Outside of that, though, Brandon, they lost every road game. They did not deserve to be in the NCAA tournament at all. Kind of a weird year, considering the year before they went to the Elite Eight
Yeah.
with Tang. So
Yeah.
to go from that to not making the tournament, no other way to put it, is disappointing. Yeah, I'm going to give them a 22. I mean,
Wow.
and some people say that's a little harsh, but that team had a lot of talent on it. I thought they underachieved. I think they'll get back to a passing grade this winter. I have no doubt, and maybe it's coming from a jaded Iowa State guy a little bit. And they did beat Iowa State, but I mean, come on, guys, like they should have been a lot better than what they finished out to be.
Yeah. I mean, I really have can't disagree with you. I'll give them a 26. I was kind of leaning towards like a 27 or maybe even get them a C minus because it felt real wishy washy. But then I remember that they lost to Iowa in the NIT, and that you can't have that happen. So easy 26 for me. But outlook wise, I think they have the right guys in the right spots. I mean, we'll really see this year for basketball, like what Jerome Tang is made out of. And I know that there's also been issues with him in the administration. You got to figure that out. But as far as
Mm-hmm.
CK on, football wise, he's such an underrated football coach. And like when people talk about like Kyle Whittingham being like the sneaky guy who wins a bunch of games but doesn't win a championship, like that feels absolutely like the mold for Chris Kleiman at Kansas State if he stays around forever. But there's a lot of questions mark with Jerome Tang. He had some, his name was thrown around a lot throughout the coaching carousel this year. Um, and when your administration and your head coach aren't on the same page, that's tough. Let's see here. I'll give them a 6. I'll give them a 17.
Okay. Yeah, I like that score. I was gonna go 16. You almost did my exact score on their outlook for Kansas State. Look, I think they're two talented coaches. I
Oh
really
yeah.
do. In Klein and Tang, I mean that. Geographical location, something to keep an eye on for them going forward. It always is for Kansas State, but compared to their in-state rival Kansas, who's close to Kansas City, they do not have that. So they're going to have to keep fighting. They're going to have to keep fighting for donor money as well.
And boy, I mean, everything that I said about Kansas State football, I kind of feel the opposite about with Oklahoma State. I did not have high expectations for them coming in. They lose Spencer Sanders in the transfer portal, um, and it kind of felt like that they were in a year where they got some tweaking to do. They got some work to do. Turns out they have a superstar in Ollie Gordon. Turns out Alan Bowman is a very capable starter despite being 84 years old. And when I said I expected Kansas State to be in the mix for the Big 12 championship and to be one of the favorites, and they let me down. Oklahoma's on the other side of that coin, where they kind of came up and kind of feels like they took that spot from a team like Kansas State. So I really like what they did football wise last year. I'll give them. Let's see here. I'll give them a 38. I really like with what they did. Um, Ollie Gordon's a superstar you can hang your hat on. Big 12 championship appearance. That's huge. Beat Oklahoma
Huge.
in the last Bedlam
Beat
game. That huge.
Oklahoma. Yeah, I'm with you, Brandon. I love that. Actually, probably right there on 38. I like what Oklahoma State did this year, considering how off the rails it looked like it was going to be. They were 2-2 after they lost Ames, and then they just got hot and they just started winning football games. Did have a couple like a bizarre letdown in November, but they still made the title game. Ollie Gordon had an all-time season, fun year, and let's not take away from that.
Without a doubt. And then it started to get cold outside. And they finished a whopping 4-14 in conference play in basketball. How are you feeling about the Pokes on the hardwood?
Yeah, just a bad team, bad year. Mike Boynton fired, gave it his all. Just not the guy for the job. That's going to happen sometime. This is a bad year, and their attendance is down. It used to be great in Stillwater. It's not. Let's go 18. I don't know what else to say,
18.
Brandon. I know it feels harsh, but it was a horrible year. And if I just gave Kansas State that 22, I have to give Oklahoma State an 18. They were unwatchable sometimes. They were not a fun group. They'll figure it out. They've got to, you know, they're gonna have a new team pretty much coming up this winter, but they got some work to do.
Yeah, let me take a look here. So my worst basketball score is Arizona State with the 20. This feels worse than that. So I'll split the difference. I'll go 19. Very solidly in the F column. Um, I mean, really not much analysis to say. They were just bad, and
Yeah,
I mean, four wins is pretty impressive with what they are. But I do like their outlook. I mean, basketball is you can't get any worse, theoretically, hopefully. And then I'm always gonna have high hopes for the football program. But boy, I do just have a lot of question marks about that basketball program. So I'll give a 15 for outlook. I think brighter days are ahead. They got some talented quarterbacks coming up. Zane Flores, shout out. Gretna, Nebraska. Ollie Gordon's a superstar, and yeah, I'm talking myself into it. Give me a 16 here because I think football is heavier in Stillwater, and they have an
it is.
opportunity to be the big dog now. I mean, they've been little brother to Oklahoma for so long. This is a team that can win two of the next 4 or 5 Big 12 championships, and that means a lot.
Yeah, you got a great. I think that's a great score, Brandon. I'll go 15. I'll just go 15 because football, you're dead on. I don't have to add anything to that. Dead accurate take. They have a huge opportunity to really become something special in Stillwater and be a regular contender in the college football playoff. Basketball, they have potential to be a regular contender in the bottom four of the Big 12 for many years. It is such a vicious conference in basketball. Can they figure it out on the fly? That remains to be seen. They got a good fan base, and Gallagher-Iba is a historically cool arena, but they got to find interest in the program again. So I'm going to go 15, but football's in great shape, and that is the moneymaker last time I checked.
Yeah, and I'm happy that we're grading this exactly how we're doing. Where we're going segment by segment. Then eventually it spits out a letter grade. C feels perfect for Oklahoma State. I feel
Yep.
like A for football almost, and then D minus F for basketball. I'm glad that we arrived right in the middle there.
Yeah, I am too, Brandon. And I think it adds up. They have some great I mean, wrestling. They've got a historically great program,
The
right?
wrestling team's gonna
Golf,
be really good. Like
right?
that's
They're
not a
always
huge
great.
factor in this. Softball is really good. They're a national contender. I mean,
It's a
there's a
good
lot going on.
athletic program in
Very
general. And
good
I know we're
athletic
just
program.
talking football and men's basketball, but I'm just saying, like, there is a lot of good stuff happening in Stillwater. And like, they have one of the nicest private golf courses in the country for Oklahoma State golf. Shout out Ricky Fowler, by the way. But just a unique situation there. So I think we have good scores. I think Oklahoma State.
I'll take you, Ricky, and I'll raise you a Ludwig, for Texas Tech, the Stillwater or not Stillwater, Lubbock legend. Um, Texas Tech football wise, Joey McGuire got me again. I feel like he got me again where I was high on them, and then they just kind of let me down. I was really expecting them to take that step and compete for a Big 12 championship, compete for a spot in Arlington. Didn't quite do that. Tough loss against Wyoming to start the season. And then I feel like we don't talk about this enough. They almost beat Oregon. Like Oregon ended up being one of the 5, 6 best teams in the
Right. Yeah.
country. Texas Tech almost
Good
beat
point.
them in week 2. Instead, they fall to 0-2 and just kind of felt like a letdown. Like the air had been sucked out of the building from there. Tyler Shuck gets hurt again, and they just kind of spiral out from there. I'll give them a C. I feel like they ended strong again, just as they did in 2022. But boy, I really had some good hopes, but it felt like they never got off the ground.
Yeah, that's I think perfectly put. That season opening loss to Wyoming was painful. That really set a tone, I think, early in the season. They adapted. They got some wins in the Big 12, but I'll go 31. It's got to stay in the C range. But they just, if they can put together, Brandon, this is a 10, 11 win team potentially this year.
Yeah.
Like, there's some good football in Lubbock, but they've got to put it all together. And you can't have play half a season. You absolutely can. That's what Texas Tech did last year.
Now, basketball wise, interesting year. Finished fourth in the Big 12, so they got that double bye in Kansas City. And they got upset. They got beat up pretty bad by 11 seed NC State in the tournament. How do you view that season?
Yeah, good year. I don't care. Good year. They really, came off of a difficult, they lose Mark Adams after kind of some weird stuff happens there. So they're kind of working with a new coach and Grant McLaughlin. He did a great job. They lost to a team that was just kind of a team of destiny, to be brutally honest, the
That's
NCAA
right.
tournament. That NC State team with Burns and that crew, kind of just a fun team in general. So I can't hate that too much. Good year for Texas Tech. Let's go 34. Because, I mean, they get the double bye in a good conference. I thought they played a pretty fun brand of basketball. United Supermarkets Arena is one of my favorite in the Big 12. It gets really loud there, and they're always got great fans. So credit where it's due. They've got to keep building, though. They lost a good amount of players this offseason. But, again, it's not last year. I thought they had a nice year.
Yeah. I really like Texas Tech season. I wish they would have won another game, but like you said, I mean, it turned out that they ran into to that team of destiny. I'll give them an A minus. It feels like they're just a year. It feels like that they're a little bit ahead of schedule, which is a good place to be.
Agreed.
I and again, just kind of based on expectations, on what I thought that team was going to be compared to how they finished. Better, much better. So 36 feels good. And outlook, boy, I mean that really depends on me, like how much of Joey McGuire that I'm buying into it, and I hate to say it, but I think quite a bit. So I'll give them a. Let's see where these other schools landed. Iowa State, Kansas, both at 18. I don't feel quite as good about Texas Tech as I do them, but feel a little bit better about them than Arizona. So yeah, 16 feels right for outlook.
You and I are on the same page. 16 is what I'll go with as well for Texas Tech because I love the fan base. They do have a good amount of donor money. I do think they have two competent coaches right now. Ones you hope stay around, hopefully win as well. But they're a fun fan base. I always am pulling for Texas Tech personally, so I'll give them a 16.
That's it. We're done. I mean,
Wow.
that's it for us here. Let me take a look here at our overall grades. Class average C plus. I feel like that's. Boy, I feel like we ended up being a little bit tougher than I thought that would be. That's a tough class average.
That's our curriculum, Brandon. We don't mess
Yeah,
around. We force you to
that's
earn
right.
your grade, right? And
That's
we
right.
curve up on the grades, so like we could curve up if we had to. We could be nicer.
Yeah. But let's see here. So the real winners, Arizona with the B, Iowa State ended up being the best with that A minus. I didn't quite expect that, but when you look at football overachieving, when you look at basketball really competing on, it feels like the highest end, that highest tier, maybe that second tier at worst. I mean, that's a tough combination to beat. Arizona's got a lot of that with their basketball program. Noah Fafita, Kansas with the B minus. Lots of good stuff there. Texas Tech with the B minus. Houston with the B. I really like where Houston is. A lot of this is going on optics. Colorado graded very high in that. Some of the losers, Arizona State with the D. I think this time next year, if Kenny Dillingham takes another step, I think we could be talking about them, jumping up a letter. Cincinnati, that grade could somehow be worse next year. I wouldn't doubt that at all. Um, but wide range, and that's what I love about this conference. That there's not like an A plus, right? Where I
Nope.
feel like if Texas was here, we're talking like A plus for how great of a football season that they had. Um, and even the teams like Baylor, who didn't grade very high, they just got the 70, just fending off that C minus and the D. Um, I feel like Arizona State with the 68. I feel like that they could make some pretty big steps, and maybe I'm wrong about Cincinnati, and they make that same kind of step too now that they're not, in that transitional phase. Lots of parity in this league.
I think my big takeaway, just looking at our grade card, Brandon, is anything can happen. And that sounds so generic and sound so boring, but you and I are doing our best to make these predictions. But at the end of the day, there's opportunity for every single program in this conference to really make a mark these next 5 years. You could really do something unique if you want to become a power. Here's your chance. There is no more traditional power, and you can beat the traditional powers, but now there's not one traditional power in this conference. So, I mean, the world's your oyster. Go take advantage of it.
Boy, what a great season! I'm so stoked for 2024. I think this is going to be a great year for the conference. I mean, what a year to have a podcast about the Big 12. Great stuff. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
Brandon, we talked last week. We're so excited for season 2 of this show, and we're starting to kind of get into that. We'll continue to have great content. You and I are going to get some sleep because I'll tell you what, come August, September, we're going to have to be at our finest because when you get that big board out coming up, we're doing the pick'em. I cannot wait for our pick'em runs again. I am just like dreaming of the day. I got to keep my winning streak going. I'm hot.
Dude,
I think
you were kind of crushing it. Both football
yeah,
and basketball. You were on top of it.
Yeah, I was hot last year, so probably that means I'm going to cool down. I went north to cool down even more, so now I'm probably going to get cold. And Brandon Shanahan's in Texas, so like he'll get hot probably. So unbelievable. So.
Well, perfect. That'll do it for us. Make sure to like, subscribe. We got lots of good stuff coming up. Sunday with the Sprinkles is starting to take off. That's in a great spot. Shout out Sprinkle Brothers. Soon to be enemies. Here's come Saturday. We start drafting. I'm rooting for their downfall. But we're in great shape. Lots of good stuff. Thanks for watching.
Hey, just what let everybody know. Brock Purdy. That's my first pick. There you go. You got him. No question. Brock Purdy.